Hey guys, Graham and Chris here. We are back coming out of left field. Chris back stateside from his European trip battle. I know you are glad to be home after a long 5 weeks overseas. What was it like finally getting to sleep in the home bed for the first time?
It was great, man. I don't get jet lag too bad coming back in time, but that travel day I was up for almost 30 hours. So when I finally hit the pillow, man, I was out. It was pretty good. I'm glad to be back. Europe was great, but back in the States and ready to talk about baseball. One of the things we really wanted to get into today is obviously some gripes that we have with the All-Star game. As we all know, the All-Star game happened this week, and against all odds, the American League won, and that's going to reverberate into the postseason, which we'll get to later in the show. But first, I'd like to talk about something that kind of makes me smile a little bit in regards to next year's All-Star game, and that is the rumors going around that there might be an inclusion of a pitcher's home run derby in next year's All-Star game, which is something I'd love to see. Something that I think that really with Arrieta and Bumgarner out there swinging the bat the way they are, that other people would like to see. And I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch.
See, Bev, man, we've talked about this before, and honestly, I was really big on it when it first started coming out. But I was bigger on the idea of a pitcher being in the All-Star game. As far as having an All-Star game designed, in the home run derby, I'm sorry, thank you. As far as having a home run derby designed just for pitchers, I don't see it being sustainable long term. Syndergaard already has the elbow issues, and he was one of the big names we've discussed. Bumgarner, Arrieta, but there aren't really a ton more pitchers that I can think of off the top of my head that I want to see hit for 4 minutes. I mean, yeah, it'd be hilarious to watch Bartolo Colon swing for 4 minutes, but I think he might tire out after about one, and he would just stand there for the next 3. So, I don't really know if you can take something in it being just pitchers and make it into something that can be a continuous every year thing. Because the whole idea, I think, behind it, especially with what made Bochy maybe okay with it, was that it would be a one-and-done thing. That Bumgarner would come in, he'd take his hacks, and then, it'd be out of his system. I don't think that he wants to see him try and do it every season.
So let me ask you this. Let's say we just schedule something like this for the 2017 All-Star Game. One scheduled home run derby for pitchers, see how it goes. And let me ask you this. If guys like Arrieta and Bumgarner put up huge numbers in this thing, which I'm not saying that they will, I'm not saying that they won't, but if they put up huge numbers, home run derby style numbers, would you have a problem then following on, seeing these guys get invited to the actual show?
No, not at all. I mean, I want to see them in the derby. I think it'd be fun to just, and I'm not saying that you leave somebody out, because we saw, for example, the winner, Giancarlo Stanton, wasn't even playing in the All-Star game. He just came in to do the derby. He's from the West Coast, so it was a nice way for family to watch him hit. He ended up putting on a huge show. But no, I wouldn't have an issue with it. If you want to say that, I don't know, and maybe this would be way too beyond what would work, but you get the top 2 or 3 pitchers to go head to head for 10 swings, whatever it is, and whoever wins the head to head matchup gets an invite into the All-Star or into the Home Run Derby next year. I'm not quite sure how feasible it would be. Something that might, on a similar note, work and maybe be a little interesting. In the NBA slam dunk contest, how often we see whoever's participating has a teammate there to help him out, right? Toss a dunk, dunks over him, whatever it may be. So what if, instead of helping him out, what if we saw a pair of teammates go head-to-head with another pair of teammates? What if we saw Daniel Murphy and Noah Syndergaard against, Jake Arrieta and Chris Bryant, or Anthony Rizzo, or against Madison Bumgarner and Buster Posey, or Hunter Pence, or Brandon Belt? What if they did it that way? Would that style of it intrigue you?
Personally, no, I don't think it would. Here's the thing. Guys like that, slugger type of guys, if they're going to get invited to a home run derby, they're going to get invited to the home run derby. I don't see, unless you're talking about having the pitchers who are invited to that throw to the guys who are hitters and then turn around and then hit. I don't understand how something like that would work. Or going round for round, like Posey goes around, Bumgarner goes around. I don't see that being as much fun to watch as just watching a couple guys swing as much as they can, hit as many home runs as they can. I can understand where you're coming from as far as a home run derby for pitchers not being sustainable in the future. We haven't really had a whole lot of pitchers come across who hit the long ball on a regular basis. Not in the last 50 or so years anyway. Guys like
one of the biggest in the 90s was Mike Hampton. And for being a good hitter, he bounced around between the Rockies and the Braves and a bunch of other teams. Carlos Zambrano was decent, but I think the rarity really this season has been that the pitchers who have had the biggest amount of luck and power with the bat have also been the pitchers who have been absolutely dominant in their traditional craft.
Yeah, and that's really where pitching has come to in the major leagues. It's a pitcher's game. Dominant pitchers are paid the most money, and I don't want to see that change. I don't want to see these guys, start getting paid to hit and pitch. I think the days of Babe Ruth, who's obviously the best hitting pitcher of all time, I would say, obviously that guys like that, their time is done. And so yeah, I don't want to see that kind of thing happening. But as far as these guys who can hit, I would like to see them be given the opportunity to see how well they can hit in comparison to guys whose job is hitting.
I agree. Buster Posey even came out and said before the All-Star game on his interview with MLB Network that he believes that Madison Bumgarner could have won the entire thing, which I know you told me that you agree. I don't. I think that Giancarlo Stanton is still the most powerful hitter in the major leagues. At 62 home runs is a home run derby record. I don't think Bumgarner had any chance of beating him. What really surprised me, I think it was a big deal. I get that they're gimme pitches, but how long have we been talking about, more so off the air, that we've seen Stanton really struggling? I mentioned a week or so ago that I wonder if he needs to see a sports psychologist the way that he's been bailing out of the box and has had such a hard time hitting. And then, right before the All-Star break, he has 2 games back-to-back where he hits 2 jacks each. So, 4 homers in 2 nights, and then he comes out and puts on a show. It makes me wonder, all of a sudden, has he found that stroke again? When he comes out and says, I wasn't swinging as hard as I could on every single pitch because I get too tired, and he was still hitting 497-foot home runs. So, yeah, I'd love to see pitchers go against the best. That's just it. I want to see them go against the best. I don't want it to be pitchers against pitchers, prolific hitters against prolific hitters. If you want to be part of the derby, then be part of the derby. Let them go against the best hitters. Show me what you got. If you knock your first round out because you hit more, well, then that guy's probably going to get ragged on for the rest of the year, and let's see where you go. But don't make it this whole pitcher against pitcher thing. Make it, players against players regardless of position.
Right, and I agree with that. I think that in order to institute something like that, we're going to have to see at least one pitcher's derby, one home run derby where it's just pitchers, to see if they can even hit the kind of numbers that these winners, these derby champions, are hitting at this point. And who knows, maybe they'll have a home run derby just for pitchers, and the winner will hit 12 home runs, and they'll say, okay, well, that's not even good enough to get invited, so we're just going to kill this. You guys had your shot. That was your day in the sun. We'll move on. But I think that pitchers are going to need an audition for this sort of thing.
I don't know about that. I mean, 12 can win it. This year was crazy. I think Todd Frazier won it last year on 15 or 16. So, I mean, it's not impossible. Most often, and it's different now because everything is timed instead of by outs where you can last and last and last. But I think pitchers could potentially compete. I don't think you need to really. I think enough players are seeing what they do in a game situation that they would have no issue having them participate in the standard derby. Now, guys, I think that we've gone ahead and beat this one down. If you agree with the idea of a derby, let us know. You can get us on Twitter at OOLeftField. Email us, ooleftfield@gmail.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Just search Out of Left Field. You'll see Chris and my picture. You can like our page on Facebook, talk to us, take part in anything, any questions that we have going on. You can talk to us if we have, any questions that you can, answer for us or stuff like that. So, we can go that route, and we'd love to have the interaction with you guys. Moving along from the Home Run Derby to the more important night of the week, that Tuesday night where the All-Star Game happens. You and I have talked, and there are quite a few things that I would like to see changed. I was surprised at some of the ones that you agreed with and some of the ones that you disagreed with or had a different idea on. The first thing that I have on here is to stop making the game count. But you brought up one in I guess we can start there, which is kind of most likely the quintessential complaint of, I think, just about everybody. Why in the world does the All-Star Game still need to count for something besides pride? Now, we said a couple of weeks ago incorrectly that in 2008, I said it when you and I were in Redstone that was a tie. That was a 15-inning game. The tie was in 2002. Okay, Bud Selig comes out in the 11th, declares a tie. Fans are angry, throw balls on the field. So he says, you know what? We're going to go ahead and make this count for home field advantage in the World Series. Now, I didn't know this, and I was surprised neither of us did. But before the All-Star Game became the deciding factor, home field advantage in the World Series just alternated every year. So, I mean, why are we doing this? I mean, I get nobody wants a tie, but the Midsummer Classic has been going on since 1933. There have been 2 ties in 83 years. So do we really need to make something? I get that home field advantage may not be as important in the major leagues as it is in other sports, but do we really want to take something that happens 3 months later and have it directly affected by a game that is supposed to be an exhibition for fans to see and have it count because of a less than 5% possibility of a tie?
And no, I don't think we do. I think it's a huge problem. I think that Bud Selig was trying to maybe give a couple of fans reasons to watch the All-Star Game after that abysmal nothing outing when guys playing in the All-Star Game didn't take the game seriously. and 1-1 tie, when guys probably weren't taking the game seriously. You mentioned it's an exhibition, but it's not an exhibition in the same way that, say, spring training games are an exhibition. This is not an exhibition to get people into the swing of baseball, to get people back into playing the game. This is an exhibition between the best players in the game.
It was 7-7 was a tie. I had my numbers wrong.
Okay. But this is an exhibition game between the best players in the league who are in the middle of long seasons and are understandably ready for a break and probably ready to just play around, not play as seriously as they might in a spring training game. But should this game have reverberations into the postseason? No. Is the way Major League Baseball decided home field advantage for the postseason prior to making the All-Star game count the right way to do it? No, I don't think so either. I think that home field advantage should go as it does in basketball or hockey. It should go to the team with the best record, as it does in other levels of the postseason. Other series in the postseason goes to the team with the best record, the highest seeded team. The 2-3-2 format kind of takes away some of the home field advantage point, but I still think that that's how it should work.
I completely agree. I don't understand why we're alternating. I mean, it's the World Series, it's the World Championship. The best team should be afforded, the best opportunity. Back to what you said, this is ludicrous. And no, it is not the same as it is in spring training. In spring training, pitchers are still working on finding command, finding new pitches, working on things. That's why scores can be so high. Because you know what, they don't care if that slider they just learned how to throw or that circle change goes back belt high in the middle. Okay, now they know what they need to do, what they need to work on. But this is a failed idea that makes no sense by Bud Selig. Fans vote for the starting players based, as we said last week, very often on name recognition and personal fandom. Last year, there's a possibility the entire Kansas City Royals starting lineup would be the All-Star Game starting lineup. Then players that are selected don't always play. Madison Bumgarner being one, Clayton Kershaw being another. The Sunday pitching rule, it's a great rule by Major League Baseball to save pitchers from doing damage to their elbows or shoulders, and it precludes any pitcher from participating in the All-Star Game if they pitched Saturday. We didn't see Lester pitch. We didn't see Arrieta pitch. So why are you going to have a game that is supposed to show the best that Major League Baseball has to offer? It does not always do that, which is fine. Safety should be first because this is supposed to be for the fans. It's supposed to be fun. So all of a sudden, we're going to take something where not everybody wants to play, and some guys, as they get older, are like, look, Skip, just put me on the DL, come up with a hangnail, turf toe, anything. Just, I need the break. So you're right. We can't keep making it hold water for anything except enjoyment. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and let's not forget that the way we choose these All-Stars is completely arbitrary. I mean, we allow fans to vote these All-Stars onto their teams, and I told you before the show that I have a problem with how All-Star voting works. Now, if you're going to make this game count, then there has to be some sort of accountability in the voting process. And to allow a fan to vote over and over and over again, as many times as they want, for the same set of players, there's no accountability there. That means that those guys who are sitting alone in their mom's basement who happen to really like baseball and are voting 50 or 60 or 70 times a day for the same guy.
Or you flying back from Europe on a plane with Wi-Fi?
One time for Brandon Belt, one time. But these guys are voting 50, 100 times a day. Who knows how often they're voting? Who knows how often every Cubs fan voted for the 4 guys in the infield in the Cubs? There's no accountability to it. So when you're letting fans just vote all over the map, make as many votes as they want for the same set of guys, and then now they win and it counts for something, now you've let the fans decide who's going to have home field advantage. And that's not how that should work.
I agree. I mean, we see the rosters were expanded. It's now 32 players are selected to each team. And I get that there's still concern of the rare possibility of a tie, but because of that concern, not all players are even making it in the All-Star game. Terry Collins said afterwards that Juris Familia and Bartolo Colon, granted both players for his New York Mets, didn't make it in the All-Star game. Familia was supposed to be the closer if the National League had the lead coming into the ninth, and if they went extras, Colon was the next pitcher. So, because of this whole concern of a tie and making it count, I get that back in the 70s and the 80s when it was about pride, you didn't always see guys. Not everybody made it. And maybe, that's okay. Problem is right now it's expected. But let's be honest, Chris, every team in Major League Baseball does not have an all-star. And some teams have multiple all-stars. Whoever the Twins put in, I don't even recall. I couldn't tell you one. Miguel Sano is probably on his way. The Tampa Bay Rays, I believe, sent a pitcher. I've watched them play a few times. They aren't that strong. Evan Longoria is still the biggest name because he's the biggest name. But he is not a top-notch all-star third baseman on a continual, perennial level anymore. So why in the world are we having guys, I get you want to say, hey, you know what, my team made it. That's great. But in the NBA, not every team makes it. And that's okay.
True. It's true in the NFL as well.
Exactly.
They don't send a guy from every team. And it doesn't make any sense. Because you're not going to see guys who are on a team like the Twins who are sub 400 winning percentage at this point. There are guys on that team there are whole scores of guys in the league right now who are starting guys on I'm sorry to say this, on terrible teams who are all hitting below the Mendoza line, and one of these guys has to go represent that team in the All-Star game with a 201 batting average and a 300 on-base percentage.
And then to top it off, how much have we talked this year about pitching? How bad pitching has been? Yet pitching is probably the most important thing that you need in the All-Star game, because if it goes extras, guess what you want? You don't want to have it. Now, granted, I think it'd be hilarious. Of all times to see it be funny is the All-Star game to have positional players pitch. I don't want to see it in an 18-inning game with the Blue Jays and the Indians where it's deciding, a win or a loss for someone. Let it just be, hey, you know what? I want to goof off. Hey, Skip, I'll finish it off. And who cares if you lose, you lose. But, you got out there and you had a chance to, to pitch it and have a little bit of fun. I respect now that, after the initial fan vote, additional players are a mix of player votes and manager selections. If a reserve is unable to compete, the manager can select his replacement. If a starter is unable to compete, the reserve with the highest number of votes in that position. That's why Carlos Gonzalez from the Rockies got the start. That's why Marcell Ozuna from the Marlins got the start, because Cespedes and Dexter Fowler, respectively, did not play for the National League in center and right field. If you want to leave the roster at 32 players, fine. But the problem is we have not had that many all-star caliber pitchers this year. And speaking of pitching, and I think it really transitions as well. Part of the way to stop having this concern of running out of pitchers, Chris, I respect everything that Bruce Bochy does. think he's a great manager. I think Joe Madden and I think Buck Showalter are great managers. Ned Yost is fantastic. He's a World Series champion. He managed this year for the American League. And one thing that they are very well known for is their use of the bullpen. And, I mean, we've seen the Royals with probably one of the best back-end bullpens that we've seen in quite a while. Why in the hell do we need lefty-righty specialist matchups in an all-star game?
We don't. And to be honest with you, and this is something that I brought up in one of our first shows about rule changes we'd like to see in baseball as a whole. We don't need them. And I don't think we really need them in games. I think it adds to the strategy if we don't have them. And I think that especially in something like the All-Star game, you're going to want to see a pitcher face two guys at the very minimum. Unless there's two outs, you're going to want to see a pitcher face at least two guys because, let's be honest, I brought up that rule in the first place as an overall league change because I think that it takes so much time to bring a pitcher in, warm him up, watch him face one guy, throw 6 or 7 pitches, come out, bring in another guy, warm him up, he faces one guy.
It's almost 2.5 minutes between each pitcher walking off and the first guy warming up. So you're saying this more as a pace of play rule change in the grander scheme, but what kind of testing it in the All-Star game first to see how it's reacted in a way where it doesn't mean anything and you can kind of gauge how managers and players and pitchers feel?
Yes and no. I think that it should be a rule in the All-Star game because A, the All-Star game shouldn't take 5 hours to play, and B, because in the All-Star game you have a limited number of players who can play each position. And when you run out of pitchers in the All-Star game, unless they're going to come up with some kind of crazy re-entry rule, which we've discussed also, when you run out of pitchers and you start putting positional guys in, well, what if the positional guys who can pitch have already played and now they're sitting on the bench as well? So you run into this situation where you can't do a double switch of a guy who might be able to throw a few pitches for you in the All-Star game. So absolutely in the All-Star game it's more necessary. But yeah, as a test run, I think it would be great.
I agree. Obviously, I think the biggest thing is this is one of and you'll see it in the regular season, but as games begin to dwindle down and the season becomes on the line and you're really playing strategy, that's when the specialist thing takes effect. And I don't mind it to that point. Let's say, for sake of argument, that, Jake Arrieta begins to struggle against lefties. And it's the final series, and you know what? They're going head-to-head with the Nationals to see who's going to have a better record when it comes to seeding in the playoffs. I can understand the idea of using a specialist, but in an all-star game, if you're Jake Arrieta and you're widely considered one of the actually, I would wager probably, one of the best right-handed arms in Major League Baseball right now. You're telling me if you have a chance to face Bryce Harper, you don't want it? Daniel Murphy, who's swinging his bat's on fire, you don't want it? If you're Clayton Kershaw or Madison Bumgarner, you don't want to face Giancarlo Stanton or David Ortiz? And we talk about, and I'm going to go back quickly as this quote pops into my head. It didn't quite happen the way that I thought it might. But Jose Fernandez of the Miami Marlins came out and said that if he had a chance to face David Ortiz, which he ended up having, that he was going to groove him 3 straight fastballs, which is great. Chandler Park did the exact same thing to Cal Ripken Jr. And what did Cal do in his first at-bat? He hit it over the fence, and he won the MVP. So what happens then if that one run becomes the difference between the win and the loss? Home field advantage and not. Why take away something that could be that special of a moment it shouldn't they shouldn't amount to down the road. You can't have pageantry and have it count for something in the same game. The All-Star Game is about pageantry. It's about a send-off. It's a chance for the entire league, the best players from every team, the executives that are there, to, if there is one going away, which we have had the last 3 years in Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, and now Big Papi, to pay them that respect, to send them off. We know we'll see that same thing as it dwindles down. His last game at Fenway, his last game at Yankee Stadium, they'll be kind of the same kind of pageantry, but it's different in an all-star game. So don't let that get lost.
No, and I completely agree. And one of the things that I think it really takes away from is when you have guys going out there and they're playing 2 innings, an inning, and they're just trying to get their reps in for the All-Star game. Hey, I made it. I'm on the field. I get to play. And it's this pomp and circumstance sort of game style. I mean, because let's face it, that's what the All-Star game is. Even the way they play the All-Star game is just pageantry. And to do that and then say, okay, well, you're still restricted to the sort of pageantry that we're used to in the All-Star game, but that pageantry is going to decide whether you have home field advantage or not. Then now you're making these guys go out for these 1 and 2 and 3 innings and say, well, I have to do something. I have to contribute in some way. And we all know how that works with baseball players. If baseball players go out to the plate and say, I have to contribute with my bat because this counts, they're not gonna hit. They get into their own heads and they end up freezing, or they end up, hitting these cans of corn out to left and right field, and they get under the ball, and it doesn't make any sense.
They get so focused on trying to guess right that they lock themselves up.
Right, exactly.
And I think we see that a lot in hitters. And it's why I think that's one of the reasons why that Major League Baseball back in 2010, along with the Sunday pitchers rule, initiated that a designated hitter will always be used in the All-Star game regardless of the stadium in which it is played. Now, per Major League Baseball rules, if a player on defense comes in to pitch, the DH is killed and can no longer be used. Or if the pitcher comes in to hit, the DH is killed and can no longer be used. We asked, or I had a chance to speak with and email once again Michael Teven, who is the Major League Baseball Vice President of Communications, and I asked him, what is the thought about opening up the DH rule, giving it a little bit of latitude to allow pitchers like the guys that we've discussed, wanting to see in the home run derby. What is the opportunity of opening that up and allowing someone like Bumgarner to pitch and still come in to hit? I really didn't get a whole lot off of it. There was an idea that, and he proposed the idea that, he could enter the game as a pinch hitter and then come take the field as a pitcher. Obviously, we know that wouldn't work. So, we went through a couple of hypothetical scenarios. None of them really worked for what we were looking for. I don't know, man. To me, we want to see pitchers in the home run derby, and they're hitting gimme balls. Why would we want to see them face a top-notch pitcher and see if they can do it in a real game? I don't want to say where it counts, but see them do it in a game situation where you're seeing real pitches. You're seeing sliders, you're seeing fastballs, changeups, curveballs, whatever it may be. and you're going against one of, what is considered one of the best pitchers from the opposing leagues. Now, I know that you absolutely, unequivocally, 100% despise the idea of the DH.
I do. I hate the designated hitter rule.
So before I get into my final point, let me have it. Just let me have it.
All right. The designated hitter rule is useless. It takes all the strategy out of the American League. I think it hurts the American League as far as bullpen strategy goes, as far as gameplay strategy goes. You know what you don't see in the American League? Small ball. You know what else you don't see in the American League? Double switches and bullpen strategy on the same level that you see it in the National League. Why is that? Because you know that the number 9 guy is not your pitcher. So when you know that the number 9 guy is basically just another number 1 guy who can set up the leadoff guy, then you don't have that worry. And your cleanup guy is the guy hitting for your pitcher. I mean,
that's a lot of guys. I mean, that's a lot of guys right there.
Yeah, it is a lot of guys. Here's the problem that I had with the designated hitter rule. And I know you're going to give me a bunch of crap. I don't care. The problem I have with the designated hitter rule is when your cleanup batter, right, your number 4 guy is the designated hitter, Ortiz, that kind of guy, right? It's great for you. I mean, he gets to sit on the bench, comes in, smacks the heck out of the ball, sits back down. That's what he likes to do, right?
We've seen Posey hit in the 4th spot. We've seen Braun hit in the 4th spot in the American League. Jason Giambi used to hit in the 4th. So, yeah, I mean, it tends to be very likely your 3rd or 4th, hitter spot.
Yeah. So your 3-4 guy is the guy hitting for your pitcher. So that way, the guy that you would normally have in a 7-8 slot is now your 9 guy, right? And he's hitting almost as well as your number 1 guy. And I just don't like it because when you have this situation where you don't have to worry about your pitcher coming in and being that quote unquote automatic out, then you have no worries about switching out, having a pitch hitter come in and worrying about whether your pitcher is going to be able to come in and pitch the next inning.
I respect that point, but I don't think it holds as much water when it comes to the All-Star game. I think when it comes to an All-Star game, people want to see the long ball, and they want to see hitting. They don't want to see small ball as much in that game. If I want to see a squeeze play, I want to see Billy Hamilton lay down a bunt with D. Gordon on 3rd, see 2 guys with wheels trying to, lay out an infield hit and score a run. I'm not looking to see whoever the pitcher is just lay down the arbitrary bunt to move the guy over. Now, we'll get.
I agree.
We'll get into the bigger side of the DH down the road. My thing with the All-Star game, though, is why can't you make it where obviously there's going to be additional DHs. Edwin Encarnacion, if I remember correctly, was the substitute DH when Poppy came out. So if you're going to have that happen anyway, and it has to be the exact same thing over in the National League, then why in the world can't we have Jake Arrieta throw an inning? You know what? If the DH at bat isn't coming up, inning it to hit, fine. If he's in the game, or Syndergaard's in the game, or Bumgarner's in the game, and all of a sudden here comes that DH spot, hey, Graham, I'm going to have him hit for my DH, and then I'll put the new guy in after he hits. Okay, who cares? I get it's not the traditional MLB rule in the sense of how it is in the rule book, but this is a damn all-star game. So who cares if you get a little bit off the reservation, to allow a guy to hit that fans want to see hit anyway. It shouldn't matter. So what if whoever's coming in to be the new DH gets one less at-bat in the All-Star game? The game is about you as well, but it's for the fans. You're going to have plenty of time to swing the bat, but let this cat come in. You know what? Hey, I want him to have one swing because people want to see it and he wants to swing. Okay, he's an All-Star. He earned that opportunity. Let him go for it. If the AL wants to do it, if the AL has a pitcher who's gutsy enough to do it, then go for it.
I agree. Now, I disagree a little bit with what you said about not wanting to see small ball in the All-Star game. And I get it. People want to see the long ball. But if the All-Star game is going to count, I definitely want to see small ball. I want to see strategy. I want to see guys button guys across the plate. I want to see teams doing whatever it takes to win that game if it's going to have repercussions into the postseason. Now, in a perfect world, in a utopia where the All-Star game is just an exhibition and nothing counts, the DH rule is fine. If, like you said, there is that latitude to allow the pitcher to hit if the manager deems it something that would help the fans enjoy the game more. And also, in exactly the same way, in another move that would traditionally kill the DH, if Madison Bumgarner's sitting on the bench and the designated hitter slot comes up, and Madison Bumgarner is going to go in and pitch next inning anyway, if the manager says, hey, I'm going to have Bumgarner go in and hit for the DH, and then when the next inning comes up, he's going to go in and pitch, that would typically kill the DH. It shouldn't. They should just let the guy hit the ball, let the guy go in and pitch. In the All-Star game, it makes enough sense because, like you said, in the All-Star game, a guy's going to DH for 3 at-bats, two at-bats, and he's going to come out, and another DH is going to come in, which theoretically should kill the DH rule. So, well, it won't kill the DH rule, but it's kind of a misuse of the designated hitter anyway. I mean, you don't see a designated hitter come out of a regular game unless the guy goes down. If he gets hurt.
But you can still substitute the DH. So let's say, for example, that it's a National League team. Let's say that we have Posey catching, and let's say Angel Pagan, for whatever reason, who I believe, is he a lefty or a righty? You'll know better than me.
He's left-handed.
Okay, so let's say that he's been the DH the entire game, but now we have a lefty coming in. You can pinch hit for the DH for Pagan, put a righty in there to face the lefty, and then he takes over the role as the standard DH. So, I don't have a problem there. I don't know if it would work as well if it happens before he pitches, because what you don't want to have happen is all of a sudden there'd be this huge run, and then he has another at-bat roll around. So, it ends up being, hey, once he's completed his time on the mound, if he has a chance to go, step into the box, can he? Sure, I have no problem with that. Similar, and Joe Girardi actually had an opinion on this. The reentry rule that you talked about.
Right.
First thing that I was surprised, he said that the first thing he would want to do, he thinks that the game should be the best 25 players from each league. That's it. Leave it just like a normal regulation game. He believes that players should be allowed to reenter under certain circumstances. They currently are, mainly the catcher. If one catcher gets injured, it is in the All-Star rules permissible for the catch, any catcher previous to re-enter the game to fill in for that role. I don't know if it extends beyond the catcher role. From what I've heard, it does not. But one thing that Girardi said, and I quote, and this is in reference to players not being able to always get in, and the fact that players cannot, like what we saw this time is that, because the game counts, sometimes managers are a little less apt to put somebody in right away because, he may not be the best person for the job, quote unquote. And Girardi said, quote, I thought that was really unfair. If you want to make it count, I think you ought to have reentry rules in a sense. I don't think that's right. It might be a player's only All-Star game. You're not going to play? That bothers me, end quote. So Oh, Chris, I know you like kind of the idea of it. So what do you think about players, in a sense, being able to, in a sense, being able to re-enter? And in what way would you allow them to re-enter? And then in what ways would you say that it makes the game somewhat of a travesty, which is the one thing that you have to try and prevent, while still having some rules bend a little bit without completely removing the semblance of what is traditionally Major League Baseball?
Well, I'll tell you, re-entry rules, even in the All-Star game, are a slippery slope. Because you get to a point where if you start just letting guys come out and come back in and come out and come back in, now you've gotten to a place where, are we playing an exhibition game, a Major League Baseball exhibition game, or are we playing a Little League game with Major League players? I like, in certain instances, the ability for a player to re-enter the game. I don't think a player that comes out, a position player that comes out, other than say the catcher, should be able to go back in unless injury is the reason that they have to return to the game. But for instance, if you have a shortstop go down, and your other shortstop is already played, but you have a third baseman on the bench, you should be able to play that middle infielder from one of your bench infielders, right? Now, obviously, a first baseman is not going to go in for a shortstop, but a third baseman and a shortstop can interchange to a certain extent, at least in the All-Star game capacity. So I don't like the ideas of position players just being able to come in and out of the game. Pitchers, on the other hand, I would be a little more lenient towards, especially if you're going to take Girardi's idea and have 25-man rosters like a traditional baseball game. Because if they do go extras, you're going to want to see guys who are short relievers or even middle relievers who came in and pitched an inning or two, or even a batter or two, be able to come back in as necessary in late innings, 12 innings, 11, 12, even 13 innings. You're going to want to see those guys be able to come back in, because the All-Star game has to have a winner, right? We're never going to have an All-Star game again where the teams tie and they end it, regardless of how long it goes. We also don't want to see 15 and 16 inning All-Star games, but that's a whole nother story. But as long as the All-Star game counts, it's going to have a clear winner. And so I think allowing middle relievers or short relievers, even setup guys, to come in and pitch again is all right.
I get that point. I think I would rather see an expanded roster with additional pitchers more than having pitchers double dip in a game, because once you come out, you should have your arm wrapped up in a towel with ice. So trying to get that shoulder, that elbow loosened up from that is going to be very difficult and very potentially detrimental. I understand what Joe's idea is. You know, it's hard to say you're going to designate a player to return. I don't know. I don't quite. I think it really begins to get away from what baseball is. I think as far as injury goes,
I think
it
put
makes
a pitch
perfect
count
sense.
on it.
You can, but I mean, you got to think that's already done for the most part now. I mean,
Right.
Johnny Cueto went a little over 2, and he struggled in the second inning. And Chris Sale, basically the way Ned Jones did it is every pitcher pitched pretty much 1 inning.
You're not going to have 1 and 2 at bat guys who are pitching 6 and 7 pitches. They're not going to run off the field in ice. So I think there's less of a chance of injury for them. Now, if you do have a guy who comes in and pitches, 15, 16 pitches, full inning, or more, then yeah, those guys are going to need rest after that. But a guy who comes in and faces 1 batter and throws 5 or 6 pitches, he's not going to run off the field and wrap his arm in ice. These guys are conditioned way better than that.
So then, would you say, and I would assume that the managers would probably do this anyway, but that if a player was to re-enter as a pitcher,
he has to have thrown less than 10 pitches,
and it cannot be a starter. It
Right.
cannot be by designation a team's any team. You know, it cannot be a Cole Hamels.
any starting pitcher.
It cannot
right.
be a starting pitcher. It has to be a reliever.
Right. And not just a reliever. I would say probably a short reliever or a specialist type pitcher.
Okay.
You have those guys go to the All-Star game and put a pitch count on it. 10 or 15 pitches. You know, if they've thrown more than 10 or 15 pitches in the game, they can't come back in. But if you have guys who have pitched, who've seen one or two batters, who've thrown 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 pitches, they can come back in and safely pitch again and see another batter or two.
Okay. And this is the last one, guys. I know you've been patient with us again. Please tweet us at OOLeftField. Email us, ooleftfield@gmail.com. Again, you can find us on Facebook. Just search Out of Left Field. You'll find our page, and you can always leave us a message there, comment on anything. You can find all the shows from the first one up until now, which is show number 8. Any of the polls that we do on Twitter, we will try to have the same text there. We always have the link where you can go to our Twitter page at OOLeftField and vote on the poll. This is the last one that I will get into, and then we'll get into, I think, what was the kind of the happy highlight of the All-Star game, and it was before the first pitch was even thrown. The last one for this All-Star game is, for the last 3 or 4 years, the American League has won the All-Star game. In the same time span, the majority of those All-Star games have been played in National League parks, similar as it was this year in Petco Park, yet the American League was the home team. The reason behind that, when asked, was Major League Baseball said that there had been a run of National League parks recently, so they wanted to basically spread the wealth a little bit and give the AL a chance to be the home team. It was one of the weakest answers I think I've ever heard on something. I don't have an issue with the home team of the All-Star game being the opposite league from where it is played, but for it to be as arbitrary as, well, it hasn't been an AL stadium in a while, so we just kind of wanted to throw them a bone, that was a little bit, as you would say, rang a little bit hollow to me. If you want something to count, why don't you just choose who has home field based on which team won the World Series last year, which would mean that it was fine this year because the Royals won it last year. So if the American League team wins the World Series, why doesn't that league get to have home field advantage? If the National League team wins, same option. What do you think, B?
No, I completely agree. I think that halfway through the season isn't a good enough time to say this league has a better record than that league. So why not make the defending champions league the home team for the All-Star game? It makes great sense. If you're going to make the All-Star game matter for the World Series, make the World Series matter for the All-Star game. Quid pro quo, and that way you don't have this question about, well, you know, the All-Star game's been played in National League Park the last 5 or 6 years, and we're just going to throw the American League a bone. Well, you threw the American League a bone, and they ended up winning a game where they're going to have home field advantage in a World Series where if you extrapolate the numbers out from right now, they aren't going to be the better team.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's why, if you want a record or a game to have have some kind of bearing on the All-Star game, then yeah, let it be who won the World Series, and that league gets to be home field. Moving on, guys, thank you for being for staying with us as we go through our All-Star game changes. We really hope you guys agree with them. If you don't agree with them, even better. But tell us why you don't agree with them. shoot us an email, ooleftfield@gmail.com. You can address it to either Graham or Chris. One of us will answer you back, whoever you address it to. We want to interact with you guys. Again, you can always leave us a message on Facebook. Again, search the Out of Left Field page, or on Twitter @OOLeftField. As we round out the day, today's show, what really, I think, struck me from the All-Star Game was the surprise that Major League Baseball had for fans, and that was that the hitting awards are now no longer referred to just as the National League batting title or the American League batting title. It is now the Rod Carew American League Batting Champion Award and the Tony Gwynn National League Batting Champion Award. Two of, without a doubt, the most prolific hitters of all time. Tony Gwynn, a member of the 3,000 Hit Club, I think it was fantastic that they make the decision to put his name on the award, and it's debuted in Petco Park about 2 years after his very, very sad and early passing from, unfortunately, from mouth cancer. I think it was salivary cancer. I thought it was a great move by Major League Baseball. We see it happen a lot in college football. Almost every single award is named for somebody, Jim Thorpe, Dick Butkus, all kind of different things.
The Heisman.
The Heisman. We see that the NBA is the Larry O'Brien, trophy. We have the you have the Lombardi Trophy in the National Football League. Right. So I think it was a great honor given to undoubtedly two of the best. And you are much more into the history of the game than I am. I look much more present day. I look at things obviously from the umpire's perspective. So I look at the game differently, though I still have respect for the history. But as someone who holds very tight to the traditional fabric of the game, and I think what was really cool for me is that you hadn't heard about this until I told you when you were on the way back from England. So, what was your feeling with this monumental new change in naming of these two awards?
I think that they picked exactly the two people who deserve these awards named after them. Rod Carew. I mean, there's no one has any ground to deny the fact that Rod Carew is one of the best hitters, definitely in American League history, likely in Major League history. The guy went to 18 straight All-Star games, won 7 American League batting titles. I mean, yeah, he has a funny batting stance. He looks like he's playing a little bit of softball with that low dipped bat tip and just bent over at the waist, barely bent at the knees. But there's no doubt that he was a great hitter. And Tony Gwynn, I mean, what do you say about Tony Gwynn? Tony Gwynn is probably on the list of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. Definitely in the National League. Guy won 8 batting titles in the National League, playing for San Diego, and I grew up watching Tony Gwynn play baseball. I grew up watching Tony Gwynn get hits when people didn't expect hits to come. And for him to get named in this batting title is, I think, perfect. And for them to unveil it at Petco, have his family on hand to accept it in his stead, because his unfortunate and untimely death was the perfect thing for Major League Baseball to do. And it's one of those instances of just perfect timing on the part of Major League Baseball. And yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that if these titles were going to get named, then they picked the right guys.
I really can't disagree with you. I mean, a guy steps up to the plate 10,550 times and gets 3,053 hits with 2 total teams in his career, in the Minnesota Twins for 11 years and the California Angels for 7. And that's Rod Carew. I mean, obviously it was way before my time. His final year playing was 2 years before I was born. I know you were a few years older than me, so you were probably 3 or 4 at the time when he stopped. So, we get that grainy footage, but you have a guy who batted a career 328. He hit 388 in 1977. His OPS that year was 1.019, which, as you described in the first show, means that, it's nuts. His on-base percentage was almost 450. Looking at his 570, I mean, it's an insane number, 822 OPS for a career. I don't know how you don't see him as one of the all-time greats. And I think the difference there is, yes, where Ted Williams was probably the greatest. I think as the offense sort of the greatest hitter. I think you look at Rod Carew maybe as being a little bit more all around. Ted Williams is so storied that there's an odd difference. 10,232 plate appearances and 3,141 hits for, Mr. Padre. Think about it. You only have 2 players that I can think of that are Mr. Club. That's Ernie Banks, rest in peace, let's play 2 for the Chicago Cubs, and San Diego Padres was Mr. Padre, Tony Gwynn.
Yeah, played 20 years there. You can't take anything away from Tony Gwynn. Guy had 3,141 hits in 10,232 plate appearances and has a lifetime batting average of 338. Lifetime OPS of 847. You can't argue with numbers like that. Those are.
And he was a class act. I think that's the thing. I think what you look at is, it's 2 guys that openly embodied the best of what Major League Baseball was. And my biggest hope is that there isn't a single cynic out there that looks at this and goes, well, of course, it's 2 African-American players, so yeah, we got to get it. Doesn't matter. Their race wasn't the issue here. What they did with that wooden stick in their hands is the reason that these are named after them. And baseball got it right. Plain and simple, baseball got it right. And I don't know what every single, obviously we have the Cy Young for the best pitcher. I don't think there's a question that if they ask, the strikeout leader, it's the Nolan Ryan Award. And we could take the show and cover our own awards and we'll call them. But yeah, undeniably, they got it right.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that if there are cynics out there making comments like that, then maybe what they need to do is have a long, hard look at themselves. Because let's face it, the guys are not just great hitters. Both of them were great ball players. They were great representatives. They were great
masters of the game. Yep.
Yeah. Great representatives of Major League Baseball. Just great on and off the field representative. You can't argue for the kind of things that Tony Gwynn did in the community of San Diego in the 20 years that he played there. There's no argument that can be made that he was not only one of the best on the field players, but one of the best guys off the field.
And let me ask you this thing, Chris, as we get ready to close. Once he retired from Major League Baseball, what did Tony Gwynn do?
Oh, you gonna put me on the spot like that?
Guess who coached Steven Strasburg at San Diego State University?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah.
He stayed in the community, and that was his focus. It's a great honor to a great guy who, unfortunately, we lost much earlier than we should have. So,
yeah, exactly.
Guys, thank you again for sticking with us. This is the 8th show of Out of Left Field. We enjoy doing it. We try to get better every time. We had some technical difficulties last week, and thank you all for putting up with us. Again, please find us on social media. Search us on Facebook, Out of Left Field. You'll see both our ugly mugs up there, and you can like the page. Talk to us. Tell us you like us, don't like us, things you agree with, disagree with. You can always email us out of ooleftfield@gmail.com, and, of course, on Twitter @ooleftfield. The same picture on our Twitter page we'll see on Facebook, so if you're looking, we have polls up there, different things. So, again, please get at us, Battle. It's good to have you back in the States, man. I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you're back. I know it's obviously a lot of craziness now is happening over in Europe, so of all time for you to get home, it was definitely a good time for it. So, then I will catch up with you during the week. We will have another great show next week and finally be getting back into some baseball topics that are once again going to be coming straight out of left field. We'll see you guys next